You cook, you text, you plan, you push the relationship forward, and still it seems you are not getting your needs met. The problem isn't that you're too much, it's that he isn't enough, and you're trying to earn love instead of receive it. My name is Marc Katz. This is the Love You Podcast. I'm your dating coach for smart, strong, successful women, your personal trainer for love, and I'm here to teach you a very, very valuable lesson today. Simply, he's not enough. And that's not always easy to hear, especially when you're in love with someone, to be told objectively that if you feel drained from a relationship, you're not getting your needs met and you might need to move on. Before we dive into why that is the case, right, the idea that you give too much and receive too little, I want to remind you that the next installment of the Extraordinary Love series, I host a Zoom call for 800 plus women, half-hour lecture, half-hour Q&A to help you attract high-value men. Next one is Overcoming Dating Burnout, How to Stay Optimistic and Engaged. Join us at extraordinaryloveseries.com. Click through on the show notes. So let's talk about why women overgive. And this is an interesting observation, I think. People tend to give for two different reasons. First of all, giving often feels good. So let's acknowledge that giving to someone that you care about actually is rewarding. And in a perfect world, we would give and give and give. And that's sort of what we're aiming for, is to find a world where we're giving. But if there's a world in which you give and you don't receive, it starts to feel bad. We can understand it when we're parents and we give to our kids and we can't receive back in the same way. But in a romantic relationship, if one person's giving and the other person's not, there's an imbalance that you will feel. And it constantly feels like the other person's running a karma deficit, right? And maybe you're running an energy deficit. So people, we'll say women, because my clients are women, are often socialized to nurture, fix, and earn love in approval. So I'm not going to play psychologist. I know you have a good shrink. God bless that person. But there's a story that sometimes happens in people's childhood where they are told that in order to receive parental love, they have to compensate for their parents' loneliness, their weakness. They have to become the parent's caretaker. They have to achieve academically. They have to be strong. They have to... So it becomes not you are loved because you are my child, but you are loved because you have to do a series of things. And then you train children that they have to do things to receive love, right? And that sets a really bad precedent. You are lovable just because of who you are. You don't have to do anything for it. You don't have to earn it. It's not a job. But a lot of people get the wrong message in childhood. And so then we've created a system in which you hope that if you give more, you will get more. If you give more, he will love you. If you give more, he will be kinder. If you give more, he will commit to you. He will meet you where you're at. And the problem is, it's not that can't happen by giving more, but remember, guys don't give because you give. That's not exactly how it works. There are guys who are perfectly content taking you for granted. And most women I've talked to, that's what they experienced in their marriage. As a guy who was really good on paper, and she thought he was generous of spirit because he had money. But that's very, very different than being generous of spirit and emotionally available and a good listener and an emotional caretaker. And right, so you end up with a guy who has all these things on paper, but you feel drained all the time. And so just want to make a distinction. Effort, you putting in effort to make him love you, does not equal a healthy relationship. Work does not equal a healthy relationship. All right, I want to backpedal for a half a second because I think I might have misspoke. In a good relationship, both parties put in effort and nobody keeps score. But neither of them put in work. Right? Because if you're keeping score, that means there's an imbalance. I couldn't tell you who's winning the relationship between my wife and I. We both feel really good about it. She gives in her way, I give in my way. And here we are celebrating 17 years. And we're not special people. We're just people who chose other people who were givers. So when you take on the role of giver with a guy who's a taker, it doesn't take that long to see that imbalance or to feel that imbalance. But what you do is take on what, in Love You terms, if you're supposed to be the CEO of your love life, you're taking on a role as unpaid emotional intern. All right? You're not really getting your needs met, but he's getting his needs met. And beware of any man who's content in a relationship where his needs are met and yours aren't. How can you tell your needs aren't met? Listen to how you feel. Feelings don't lie. We'll talk about that in an upcoming podcast. So there is a tendency from women to overgive to their men, to their detriment, to try to win him over, to convince him to love her, to convince him to step up, to convince him to commit. And all that work is really unappreciated and not necessarily reciprocated with the wrong guy. The answer is not to do more. It's to choose a guy or leave a guy, or choose a better guy or leave the guy who leaves you in that position. All right? So consider who you're giving to. Consider the man himself. All right? Emotionally unavailable men lap up love. They love to receive. Right? And it's not wrong. Receiving isn't wrong. Feminine energy to some degree can be considered receptive. So receiving isn't wrong. It's just a certain measure of selfishness, right? That where he'll be thrilled that he was watching the football game and you went to the fridge and got him a beer, which is a really nice gesture. It's a tiny thing. It's a nice gesture a lot of people don't do. But he would never consider doing something like that, the equivalent thereof for you. And that's where the imbalance starts to show. So think of all the guys who are incapable of being givers. It's the guys who run hot and cold. They love you today. They're silent tomorrow. The guys who claim they're not ready. They love you. They're attracted to you. They feel a strong interest in you. They've never felt anything like it. And yet they're not really stepping up to the plate. So you're consistently off balance. Right? What they call breadcrumbing, giving you just enough so you could keep on going, but never enough that you feel secure. Right? And there are guys, that's like a male dating strategy when cynical bad guys go to the internet. Right? Here's how you keep a woman, right? Give her intermittent dopamine rewards. Keep her off balance by not giving to her consistently. So you can maintain a relationship with an insecure woman that way. It works really well. Right? Intermittent rewards, but it's not a healthy relationship. It's not one where anybody could ever actually relax. And we've just chosen those relationships too much because they often remind us of childhood dynamics. So if he's inconsistent, if he's avoidant, right? No amount of giving will fix that. Right? Because you're ultimately giving to a guy who is by definition a taker. So it's not terribly complicated to figure out which one is which. It doesn't take very long, right? And let's distinguish between different kinds of giving, right? The 5 love languages. A guy could give you a watch, doesn't make him a good boyfriend. A guy could take you on a vacation, doesn't make him a good boyfriend. It makes him a guy with money. That's literally all it makes him, right? And would some women be like, oh, he's a good boyfriend because he buys me nice things? Yeah. But that's one love language. And very often it's not the one that you need the most. Why? Because you have your own money. So then what does giving really look like? Quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service. Right? There's a lot of guys who don't perform any acts of service. Now, acts of service is a pretty common guy thing to do. Taking out the garbage, packing the car and the luggage, cleaning the gutters, those are forms of acts of service. There's a lot of guys who do that. But there's a lot of guys who I make money and then they come home and then they wait for you to take care of them. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if that's not what you signed on for, you're going to feel pretty resentful, right? So I have a phrase. I often cite things I talk about in Love You, right? And I think it's worth, if you're going to write down one thing, this is it. You can't give too much. You can only give to the wrong man. Right? My wife's a giver. I'm a giver. As I said, we're not special people. Right? But if you give to the wrong person, then you're constantly going to be in a deficit. If you give to the right person, it's mutually beneficial, symbiotic relationship where everybody wins. So that feels like that's the only relationship that anybody should ever enter or stay in, is one where they're receiving in some form at least what they're giving. So what does healthy giving look like? Number one, you're not constantly chasing. You're not constantly in need. You're not constantly keeping score in your head. You are in receptive mode, and you're appreciative of his generosity, whatever form that generosity is. Right? And the more appreciative you are, the more it makes him want to give more. It's also a pretty virtuous cycle. Right? The other thing is healthy love is consistent. Right? You're not left wondering where you stand. It's not this thing that people tend to engage in, where they think that relationships are all about fighting and make-up sex and breaking up and talking about us. Where is this relationship going? What are we doing here? Bad relationships require a lot of those conversations. Good relationships, pretty smooth sailing. The way I would anticipate your best friendships probably don't require too many discussions about the nature of your friendship. Right? So the feelings we talk about, the feeling of safe, heard, and understood really matters. It's hard to feel safe with a guy who shouts you down when you disagree, who slams the door when you want to have a discussion, who punishes you for wanting to feel more connected to him. Right? And again, if you're listening, you probably recognize some of these signs. They're sadly really, really common. So once you stop giving to the wrong men, everything changes. Because you could, right, I talk about it's like putting money into a bank account you could never withdraw from. Just imagine putting money in a hole in the ground, right, for years and years and years, and then one day discovering someone dug up all of your money. That's what it's like to be in a bad marriage to someone where you're the giver and they're the taker. You're just pouring more money into something that you're never, ever going to get back. It's just a shitty feeling. Right? So you want to pay attention to your own feelings. How does it feel to be in this relationship? Can I relax? Can I let down my guard? Do I have to walk on eggshells? And does it elevate me in some way? And it kind of doesn't matter what your role is, because there are so many different kinds of giving. I have a traditional marriage where I'm the primary breadwinner. My wife is the stay-at-home mom. She primarily takes care of the house. She doesn't contribute at all financially. I contribute a portion, but not nearly as much as she does, to the house and the kids. And we found a balance that works for us. My sister's in a more egalitarian marriage. Right? They're both six-figure earners, but he's the guy who likes doing the cooking, and he's the guy who likes to sand his own cabinets and build his own coffee table furniture. You know, God bless guys who work with their hands, right? But my sister's the one who's more likely to drive them to soccer practice. There's always some sort of give and take, but in good, enduring marriages, from the outside, it looks pretty healthy. And from the inside, it feels healthy. No one is questioning their role or their partner's dedication. Because even if they don't give the exact same thing that they do the best they can. And it feels like I have a partner who's lifting me, who's easing the burden of life, rather than draining my energy and causing me a burden. So you don't need a dating coach to tell you these things, right? I'm just trying to validate what you've already experienced and validate what you're already feeling and allow you to act on those feelings. So if you're tired of being the sucker in the relationship where you give far more than you receive, please reach out to me. Not for my sake, but for yours. My name's Marc Katz. Go to evanmarckatz.com/now. Book a time to talk with me. Tell me your story. I'll listen. And we'll figure out a plan to help you attract a guy who is a giver, not a taker. And you could have a great 20, 30, 40 years ahead of you that's better than anything you've ever experienced before. But it has everything to do with the kind of guy that you choose. If you haven't already, join the Extraordinary Love Series. I can't believe you could listen to this podcast and not have done it already. Go to extraordinaryloveseries.com. It's a monthly lecture and Q&A where I help high-value women attract high-value men. This month's episode, How to Stay Optimistic and Engaged. Can't wait to see you there. And if you haven't already, because I give so much to you. What do I receive? I give so much. Go to Apple, go to Spotify, subscribe, make this part of your regular feed. Leave us a 5-star review. Leave us a comment. Share this one episode with a friend who needs to hear it. That would mean the world to me. I love you. I appreciate you. I thank you for listening to the Love You podcast. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye-bye.